I'm very excited and proud to be here today. So today, the shorter version of the title of this is going to be 3D and AI. So basically, when you think about creating things in a 3D software, you're thinking about creating incredible possibility. You can create any world, any character, anything you could possibly imagine. And we've been doing this for years. This is the teaser trailer for the software package I work on at Adobe. We've worked on pretty much every film that you've seen, every game. And it's incredible to be able to have some technology that helps you create incredible things. But it's really hard. It's super complex, like crazy complex. It takes years to master. It's really prohibitive for most creatives to really kind of wrap their head around and get to the level where you're able to create the things that you want. In steps Gen AI. It's super easy, right? Text to prompt, beautiful image. Lots of companies are doing it now. It's incredible. But you have very limited control over this. You, as a creative person, I find myself so frustrated with the slot machine pull of this. Here's for those that can't read it, it's an AI prompt of salmon in the river, and that's exactly what it is. And so for me, as a creative individual, the idea of just using text prompts to generate the images that I'm trying to create in my creative solution, it doesn't work for me. I'm a very visual person. I've always have been, and so today we're going to talk about how we can combine the idea of some very simple 3D workflows. You're not going to have to know everything about 3D, but you're going to be able to use some simple things, drag and drop technology, sliding things around in space to compose an image, to compose the Gen AI image that you want. So that's what we're going to get into today. All right, so hi, I'm Michael. I've been a 3D artist for a really long time. I'm 109 years old. I was a 3D artist for over 13 years at a place called Blue Sky Studios. We did Ice Age movies, Rio, Ferdinand, Peanuts, whole bunch of different things. The last film I worked on before I left was called Nimona. It was just up for an Academy Award this year. It was a film that Disney tried very hard to not get released, and they closed down my whole studio just for that. And but it got released, and it's awesome, and you should check it out on Netflix. This is not a promo for that, but that's just my thing. Since that company was shut down, I joined Adobe 3.5 years ago. I'm currently the head of 3D tech artists there. And in my time there, I've learned that 3D is not just about entertainment anymore, video games or that kind of thing. So many companies are using 3D, fashion, footwear, e-commerce sites. Basically, anybody that produces anything wants a digital twin of it, a 3D representation of it. So, a little more about me. I wrote a book called Lighting for Animation because that's what I did for a long time. I am also, my newest endeavor outside of Adobe is I run a community called the 3D Artist. I have a newsletter. I do all the things that you do in 2024. I have a newsletter. I have an online community you can check out. More on that later. You're not here for that. Okay. So demo time. Let us hop into this workflow a little bit. So we're going to be using two Adobe software. I work for Adobe. That's what we do. I'm going to use Firefly. Right now I'm just using the web interface of it, but I'll kind of talk a little bit more through that later. I'm also going to be using this piece of software. This is called Substance Stager. It's a very simple, it's the easiest to use 3D software I've ever encountered. If you've ever tried to download Blender or Maya or something like that, again, super complex, but you can see here that I'm going to be able to do everything today on a computer where you're just going to be doing a lot of dragging and dropping of stuff. So one of the examples that I showed was creating that cocktail glass in a bar. And to get that, just a quick overview of the space. I've got my main workspace here in the middle. I've got kind of some default preloaded 3D models here on the left. And then the right is where all the parameters and stuff go. It's very Adobe-esque. It's very Photoshop, workspace, tools, parameters. So basically, to get some basic geo started, I can just drag and drop it into space. Got my plane. I just want to make a little cylinder, drop that guy in there. Cool. There's this little widget in the middle. You can spin this around, control that. All very standard to 3D software in general. But again, it's very the dragging and dropping of models into the scene is pretty clutch. It's great. So now that I have this and I just have my basic scene laid out, now it's time to create a camera. There's a little button up here at the top with a camera and a plus icon. Now I've got my camera and I can control the focal length. I can control the output size, and you can really start to like use this to craft exactly how you want your scene to go. Now for this next step, this is the way things are today, and I'll explain in a little bit where things are going to be going. So basically at this point, I need to render out this image, which is basically take this 3D information and make a still image out of it. That's in this render tab up here. I just click render. Yes, I want an untitled thing on my desktop. That's where I save everything. Awesome. Let me go and fit this to the screen. And basically that's it. So now I can go into the Firefly web application and I can start typing in what I want. And normally you'd be like cocktail on a wooden bar at nighttime. Cool. And I would enter this. We go to this other interface and you can see like the first round of the Gen AI stuff that comes up. It's exactly what I typed in, but it's not it's not the composition I want. This is especially true if you're designing for if you're trying to get like a background for your product placement, right? Like you want to clear some space in the middle for it, which is kind of the way that this setup is. So for that, all I'm going to do is go down here to where it says reference, and this is what's called the structure reference. And what structure reference means is it's going to use it's the same thing that's like in Stable Diffusion, like it's the control net idea if you guys have used that. Use this image helps drive the final. So there's a strength slider, so I'll just turn that all the way up. And again, I can still run cocktail on a wooden bar at night. There's all these other options that you can choose down here. I'm just leaving those blank for now. And what you can see is the output follows the image composition that I created. So you've got this on the left, you've got and so you can say like, you can change this up, you can make it an old fashioned, and have that be, actually I think the aspect ratio. Yeah, so I meant to go widescreen with it. It was cropping it down a little bit. So basically that's the basic workflow. You use the 3D tool to create the composition that you want. You bring it into Firefly, or your Gen AI engine of choice. I just use Firefly because most of my clients are worried about the commercial viability of this, and Firefly provides that. And so you can do that. Now the question obviously comes up. It's like, wait a second, I am not a 3D modeler. I don't know how to make a lot of things. I'm sure you can't just get everything with cylinders and cubes and spheres and stuff. And you're absolutely right. So for this next one, I when I was coming up, I really loved photography. That was like my jam. I love food. I want to do food photography. When you're 22 and waiting tables at a Buca de Beppo, like you don't make enough money to pay for a lot of food. So like the idea of practicing shooting like sushi was always like a big problem for me. So what I did for this example is I wanted to like do a food product shot of some sushi. So for that, I hopped over into, this is the Substance Asset Library. It's a huge library. Again, doing 3D stuff for a long time. We have a team in France that just churns out 3D content. There's like over 10,000 different materials, but the big thing that we're looking for are models. And so I can type in sushi here. We've got some different varieties. I can go back into my 3D application. I'll start a new scene. Same thing. I'll just put a little cube down. I'll just scale this guy down. It's going to be the square plate that this sushi is on. And then to get that 3D model into the scene, you literally just drag and drop it. There it is. So it's all 5 of them for now. I don't want all 5. I just want 1. So for me, I'm just going to select. So I'm just going to delete the things I don't want until I just have the one piece of sushi that I have. And look at that, just throwing sushi away. My 22-year-old self would be very disappointed in me. All right, cool. So you can pop this in the plate. Oh, that's a shrimp one. That's not the one I wanted. There we go. Whoop. All right. Cool. Everyone knows you don't eat the shrimp. That's just a filler one. All right, cool. So I can put that in the plate. Again, same deal. I can rotate it around, create my camera, position the camera exactly how I want. In this particular case, I'm going to go in and make it more like a telephoto lens. So if I always had like an 85 millimeter lens that I always really liked. So I'll just do that. Position this down here. Cool. If you want, one other trick, I don't think I'd necessarily need it for this one, is to just change the color of things to make sure that there's not any problems. So for that, there's a little material tab here. I can just go into the base color, make that red. Cool. Awesome. Go into the render. render it out. Of course, I want to call it untitled on my desktop. What else could you possibly do? Oh, my favorite thing, this is just me. At some point, you got to switch this stuff around. So I found that I tend to just like update the new image, and then whatever the old prompt was that I have, I just run it while I set up the next one, just because it's you get kind of funny results of what an old-fashioned on a wooden bar at night looks like when it's a sushi roll. So let's see. So I'm typing in salmon, sushi. One of the things that's really nice about Firefly is it gives you these suggestions. It's trying to help you out. It's like it's trying to say like, hey, I'm pretty good at this stuff. Like just do it. So if you're looking for something, salmon sushi on a black plate, we'll say it's reflective, and we'll say in a Japanese restaurant. Cool. And as you can expect, the same type of output. So you can use this as your foundation of really controlling the AI image output. So again, it's still a little bit of a slot machine pull because you're not 100% sure what you're getting every time, but you can control the composition to exactly what you want. I can also, another element that I did for this was that I also, as somebody who like wants to control different elements of the 3D scene, I did some tests on using it to control lighting. So I used some just shapes to go ahead and control the lighting of certain things. Again, this is just there's a attribute called emission that can turn something into a glowing light. So I use that as a window. This animating of the character into place has nothing to do with it. It just makes a better video. So I did that. But basically you can see how you can use you can start to control other elements. And somebody mentioned Kriya doing this thing where you can paint, and then the Gen AI model will actually update. There's artists in the 3D space that are using Kriya plugged into a Blender or other 3D tools, and they're moving the 3D assets around, or they're sculpting in 3D space while the Gen AI engine is outputting images. There's this guy named Martin Nebelong, who's I didn't put in the slide deck. You're nodding your head. Fantastic artist. Really love that guy. He is doing just that, and it's kind of the way that I genuinely think kind of the future of 3D workflows is going to go, is that it's going to be this combination of generative AI as the image output of a 3D input. Because right now, like I said, the complexity comes in that the renderers and the things that you create are magnificent. They're beautiful. They're works of art in themselves, but you have to tell it everything that you want. You have to say how many like shadow rays you want, and you have to say how big certain things are, and you have to like give every attribute to it. Where Gen AI engine, you can feed in what you need, and it can kind of like, you can feed in some basic stuff and it can help you fill in the blanks. Now, a very real use case that happened to me this week on this, and this is something else I didn't anticipate showing you all today, but this came up, and this is like my new talking point for this. So real world example. On our team, I have an incredible artist named Chino Lei. He turned the 3D model of this handbag into what you see on the right. Beautiful. It's awesome. We wanted to use in the splash screen when you load up Stager. So I was going to take that on, and I was really excited because I had a great idea. Stager, I've always thought of as being like my virtual photo studio, right? So I want to be like, okay, cool. I want to put this bag in a photo studio. So I went to that same asset library. You can go back. Sorry, thank you. I saw someone taking a picture. I wanted to, you're good. I wanted to put this in a photo studio. So like I said, normally, and just to caveat this, normally this would take me like a week to a week and a half to like do everything in 3D, like lay it all out, put the bag in the thing, get my assets in place, put the right plastic and the glass and the whatever. It's like, it's awesome. It's my favorite thing in the world to do, but it's time consuming. In this case, I went to the asset library. I found a bunch of photo studio stuff. I placed it around in the scene. I had my 3D handbag there in the middle. I simply just turned that off, used this to generate my different photo studios. And I came up with this one. I really like this one. I brought this back in a Stager. In Stager, there's a function where you can integrate 3D models into photographic backplates. And you can do it with Firefly too. We now have that built in. And so I put this, and I was like, I'm really excited about this. I think this is a great idea. Photo Studio, Gen AI, we're showing off all of the features that we're doing in Adobe. And they were like, no, thank you. But I was able to get to this no in about 15 minutes. It took me almost no time at all. So my talking point that I want to end on is you can use this workflow to get to the answer of no really, really quickly. I would have been so frustrated if I spent a week and a half on something and sent it over and they're like, no, that's not really what we want. We meant to tell you that we wanted something much more colorful. And I was like, okay, that would have been really helpful a week and a half ago. But after 15 minutes, like, what do I care? I'll just do it again. And so we iterated a bunch more times. We were able to go through the inevitable creative designer client back and forth. We were able to get through that much faster and get to the final product. So get to know as fast as you possibly can using Adobe Firefly. That's never going to be the slogan. So basically what's going to happen is the way that I was exporting this stuff outside of Stager and into the Firefly web app is the way it's being done now. But it's like Adobe's thing that Firefly is not going to be a separate entity. It's not going to be a website forever. It's going to be integrated in the tools that we already use. Photoshop, Illustrator, it's all going to be in there. And in this case, that same interface that you find on the website is going to be in the Stager application. So you'll be able to build the 3D objects instead in that renders. We're trying to figure out how to do it. So the UI isn't worked out yet, but basically you'll be able to generate your Firefly image based on the 3D assets you build directly in the application. So you won't have to go back and forth. You won't have to render out an image. You can lay stuff out, type in your text prompt directly in the app and then go from there. And that's going to be the first step in that. I'm not the software engineer, so I never say dates on these things because I don't want to pay anybody in a corner, but it's not that far away. That'll be that. Okay. I think I can open it up for some questions. Oh, last slide. This is me. You can find me on all the socials at Michael Tanzillo, QR code. I don't know if I should have waited to do that, but I'll leave that hanging up there. So, like in Firefly in general, like, can you say put this in the upper left-hand corner? I bet you can get there, but I've never been able to. That's just not really the way that I work. I would rather generate something than do it visually. So there are ways of doing it through the text prompt and kind of like driving things. But for me, I would much rather use the structure reference either to sketch something out by hand or do something in 3D to lay it out that way. It just seems less chance for error to communicate that visually. It's basically if I have something in my head that I know I want it to look this way, which is most of the time because I'm stubborn. That I always do it in 3D because even though it like feels intimidating and it feels like this huge barrier. It's easier than drawing. Like at no point did I do anything today other than click a mouse and drag and drop. Like I didn't have to do anything that my kids couldn't do. So that's really the benefit of it is it's easier than drawing, and it's more predictable than text prompting. Yeah, it's called Substance 3D Stager. So it's a very simple, straightforward. It's generally used for product renders. So like that handbag, imagine like that was your soda can or the shoe that you designed, or you can bring it in there and do marketing images. You can do internal design reviews by just rendering those out as still images. But it wasn't designed just specifically for this purpose. It's designed for more traditional 3D stuff, but we're just using it in this workflow now, or I am. It's more like we have the other tool that we have is called Substance Modeler. It's a modeling application that's clay-like, so you can sculpt. And one of the big benefits is that you can use it in VR. So you can put a VR headset on. It works right now with Oculus Quest, and we're working on other platforms. You put your Quest on, you've got your controls in your hand, and you can actually like physically sculpt out the space and put the positions around that way. It's bananas. Like again, for years, modeling was like moving your mouse around a little bit and like clicking and dragging and polygons and very technical. And the first time I tried it, I put my headset on and I was expecting the model to be like right here and I couldn't figure out, and it was like behind me. It was like and you can finally use like big arm motions, and big gestures to do sculpting the way it was meant to be done, as opposed to you're like hurting your neck with little mouse clicks. I can show you this one a little bit too. So like, let's say, I'll just do this as an example. So one of the things that's really nice about Stager again is that you can use generated images, whether they're photographs, Firefly generated images, to affect what's going on in your scene as well. So I'm just gonna take this. It's just a sphere, nothing super fancy. I'm just gonna make it metallic and take down the roughness so it's like super shiny so you can see what's going on. And basically, I'm gonna make a camera. I've got a photograph, and this is not a Firefly generated one, but imagine it is. And actually, in the beta version of Stager, which I don't have open at the moment because I generally don't demo with beta stuff because I'm always afraid it's gonna crash. But basically, what you can do is you can text prompt a Firefly generated image that automatically gets dropped into the background, and I'll show you what that looks like. Yeah. So this is just a JPEG. Thank you. That I'm going to drop in here. So dropping in the background. Awesome. Just turn off the grid. And so what I'm going to do is there's this magical match image button that when you click it, it actually uses Adobe, before Firefly, Adobe's old machine learning application that I feel like doesn't get into the credit it deserves because Firefly took over, but it's still awesome. And basically, what it does is it reads the image, sets the aspect ratio of the render to the background. It creates lights in the scene to match the lighting in the scene, and it also matches the camera's perspective. So again, it's not using metadata or anything. It's just using what's going on visually in the scene. And then when you click the image and I turn on the ray tracer, you can see that now the reflections of the image are in the sphere. And so the scene is now influencing 3D objects. So you can work backwards. So if you have a 3D object and you want your Firefly environment to influence it, you can definitely do that. Well, Firefly is wide open. Anyone can go to the website and use that. There's a couple things that you can do. There's obviously there's a free trial you can do with Stager, but there's also an application called Dimension, which is similar to Stager. It doesn't quite have the same functionality entirely, but it is a free download still at this point. And again, like the workflows that I'm showing aren't. You could also use like Blender if you want to dive into that. That's a free software. You can use that. You can jump it in a stable diffusion. So like I said, for me and for my workflow, it's really all about using these specific tools. But for anybody, it's really you define the tools that work best for you. And yes, there are free options that are out there. Yes, it'll if you can hand draw, you can do something in Photoshop. Like if I just made those shapes of the glass and the table out of just like squares in Photoshop, it would do the same thing as well. It's just for me, I do 3D, A, because that's what comes naturally at this point to me, and B, it's like you don't have to worry about messing up the perspective, which is a big one for me. Like I like to be able to put things down, think about it in terms of focal length of a lens, and then everything will fall into place really well. Because that's something else about Gen AI images that I've discovered without kind of guiding them. The fall off points can be all over the place on an image, and it drives me crazy. Right? I don't know if anyone else has this, but it's like the vanishing points don't make sense. And so by this, you can keep all that in line. For me, the people that are using this, I mentioned Martin Nebelong. He's like really leading the. I mean, he was part of the reason that I was inspired. I was also inspired by the March session here. I came here and I was watching another incredible artist who was generating things and piecing them together in Photoshop, and I was like, I think we can do that in 3D. I think there's a way to. So that actually was that night I went home and started playing around with this workflow. So, but the biggest use cases for this is like honestly people just using it for early concepting the way that I've been doing it. Like it's still the fastest way to get clarity on how you want the image to look. And for most people, like that photo studio, if I got that approved and if I was working myself, I would then go back and like make it for real. Like I would then go back, and once I have that kind of vision, I would go back and do all my 3D props and do it entirely 3D, because that's the way that I work. I've known other people who will do it as a precursor to a photo shoot. So they'll set it up and be like, okay, is this how you want your product photographed? Like where the thing is in the middle here and this is over here, and they say yes, and they get pre-approval on that. And then and it's really just at this point, it's one of two things. It's either for concepting in that regard, or it's branding and putting an environment around your product to create the emotion that you want. So soda that's got a new mango flavor, you can have your hero product, and it can be photoshopped, it can be in 3D. But basically you would design everything around it, where the palm trees are, where the sand is, where the beach is, and everything. And then you're able to quickly put your product into a Firefly generated background. It's like as opposed to it's a little more custom than what you would find in a stock library. I don't know, because everything's moving so quickly. But if I had to guess, I would probably guess in maybe a year, it would be, which is like, but that's just like based on the acceleration of how fast things are moving. I was just talking to my boss, who we've both been in 3D for 20, 25 years. And we just like, and I showed him this workflow, because again, this is still something I'm developing and pushing at Adobe, but, and he just laughed, and we both just laughed. He's like, well, how did we get here? I was like, I have no idea, man. I have no idea how we got here. This is insane. So I would say that, and when I've been pitching this idea around of like generative AI as 3D render engine, and it's getting. I think it just makes too much sense to not be there, and it's just for stills. I would say it's going to be there in a year, and then for animation and moving images, maybe 2 to 3 years out. Total guess though.